So let me quickly introduce myself so you know who is this person that you're gonna spend some time with, because you might want to know what am I doing here and what is my relationship with Angular. And the beauty of this session is that I don't have any slides prepared, because slides is boring. No, come on, why? No, slides is boring. Let's let's look at code. Let's code together. Let's do something fun. I'm gonna put my very simple website, which I built with React. Here you can find a bunch of links, because everything you're gonna see today, if you like to get a reference to the code, if we look at some slides, because I don't know, we're gonna feel like we want to do it. If you just want to keep in touch, I'm available for everyone, so feel free to ask questions, to ask for more resources. Even if you like, we can initiate a Zoom session together. I'm here for you guys. And after this wonderful meetup, there's going to be an after party, I heard, in the House of Angular offices. And generally speaking, if you don't have anything special to do on the weekends, so as a warm-up before NG Poland, we can talk about front-end development, if you like. So this is me. My name is Nir Kaufmann. I came especially from Israel, and I insist to be part of this meetup, because one of the things that I really like to do is exactly what's going on right now. So it's much better than anything else. During the day, I'm a front-end tech lead, currently at an Israeli startup called Next Insurance. So the business is fintech, and we're building digital insurance products. A lot of Angular and other technologies like React Native and React for our marketing side, and some Flutter. But I am in a long relationship with Angular. So I started in 2010, I believe, where AngularJS version 1 just emerged. And since then, most of my front-end development career is Angular got a very, very important part in my life. Very exciting, I must say. All right, I think basically that's it. I'm gonna ask some questions during this workshop. If you feel like you wanna ask something during this session, feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to interrupt me. Please don't forget, this is a wonderful community meetup, so we don't need to be too official. So if you feel like you want, hey, wait a second, why, how, and so, feel free to do it, all right? If you want to jump on the desk and I don't know, and dance or whatever. It happens sometimes. Let's create a new Angular project. How can we create a new Angular project in 2022?
With NX.
With?
NX and Narwhal.
You can. Who's familiar with NX Workspace? Not too many people, which is good. NX is a wonderful kind of, I don't know if to call it an alternative to Angular. NX will create a very modern, let's put something on the screen, yeah? NX, Workspace, great, this is NX, yeah? Great technology, great working environment. It can be used to monorepos. It is a monorepo eventually, but you can mix up different technologies, different workshops, very Angular oriented. Everything good about NX except one thing. Sometimes to get started with NX can be a little bit of overhead. So like if there's the first thing that I would like to share with you from my own experience is like always try to think of, let's start by keeping it simple, because you can always add NX to your project. Actually on my IDE, I just installed a great plugin that suggests me to add NX to my regular Angular project. So you can add NX in any step in your development workflow. But today we're going to start simple, but we're going to start cool. So instead of ngserve, let's use npm. npm init Angular npm init slowly becoming like the de facto script that can generate literally everything. So if you click npm init Angular namespace, it's actually gonna invoke the ng CLI on its latest version and generate a project for us. Let's call this project Angular Love, because everyone here loves Angular.
Exactly.
Yeah. Where are you? Well, where is it? Oh, I just heard the voice. I thought it was God talking to me, but I wasn't sure. Yeah.
On the floor.
Is there anyone here who doesn't use Angular and it's here just because it's like free pizza and beer? Raise your hand. Oh, you didn't even know there's a pizza.
Oh.
Yeah.
Surprise.
That's totally okay. I mean, if you're here for free food, that's fine. I believe that the Angular Love community and House of Angular is pretty much like support hungry developers. So feel free to do it. Would we like to use Angular routing?
No.
Don't get too excited.
Come on.
Do we want to add Angular routing? Yeah, let's use it. Why not? We're gonna use CSS, and we're going to wait for it to initialize. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about Angular 14. Who's using Angular 14? Who's already? Cool. Yeah, cool. I mean, you just upgraded, but you started the process of like refactoring your code. I mean, Angular hits a very important milestone, to my opinion. I mean, yeah, it's kind of strange. If you're a newbie to Angular, you might find it a little bit confusing because now you can create modules, but you don't have to, and you have this functional approach, but we're still using classes. And if you're working with other front-end technologies, you might look how React inspired the Angular core team to make the, let's say, to make the framework a little bit more flexible and to give us the option to use more functions. I think it's great. It will take some time to get used to it. I believe it's great for us. I mean, for people who works with Angular for 2 years or so, it is going to be a little bit hard to teach new people how to use Angular because now you've got many options to do stuff. Let's jump into some code. Yeah, that's it. So I'm gonna open. Let's open VS Code, and then close it and open a professional IDE. So I've got WebStorm here. Because come on, we are professionals. We don't use Office products to write code. But if you did, that's perfectly fine. I might have some free licenses to WebStorm. So if anyone here really wants to use WebStorm, but he doesn't want to pay, remind me later at the after party. And if I have some free licenses, go ahead and use it. It's for life, I think. At least for 1 year. Where is the project? Where is the project? Angular Love. Found it. I'm gonna open this. Can you see it? Yes. All right. Cool. Let's get it. This. Oh, what am I doing? Let's get this up and running. I don't use the console too much, the built-in console, because again, I like WebStorm. I use it for years, and we do have a great integration with NPM, which I can't find right now, which is embarrassing because I was looking for it and it's not here. Embarrassing.
You have to right-click on package Json.
No. Oh, here it is. Aha. Here it is. There is a integration with NPM, so it's much easier for me just to do ng. Like npm start from here, and it's going to do ng serve, which probably going to fail because I probably got something open on the default port, but if not, all right. Questions for you guys. An Angular project. What's going to be the first file that you're going to visit? Shout it out loudly. Package JSON? What is the heart, the beating heart of an Angular project? Angular JSON. Come on, Angular JSON. All the interesting stuff going on in Angular JSON. All right. The first thing that I do when I encounter a new project is hitting Angular JSON and schematics, because I use schematics a lot. And in schematics, I can do several things. First of all, component. I like to use inline templates. I like to use inline styles. For this demo, for this session, we won't write any tests, so I'm going to spare creating a spec file. So I'm going to do a skip tests. It's going to be true. And because you're going to skip test and everything is in line, we can keep it flat. So we don't need to create a folder for it. If you would like to start with kind of best practices, you probably want to set change detection to on push. If you're working with Angular 14, when you want to slowly migrate to standalone components, you can set a standalone.
Should we?
That's a good question. We're gonna discuss it during this session. Should we move to should everything should be standalone, or it's make more sense to kind of choose what we want it to be standalone? That's a great question. But one of the practices that I believe in is give a different prefix to your components or directive. That's cool. So let's say that my company name is Angular Love. So ALC gonna be for components, and for directives, I'm gonna use a different prefix. It's gonna be Angular Love D. The reason that I'm doing this is that in some point, if you create a lot of components and a lot of directives, and if you're doing some nice stuff like input names, structural directive, micro syntax, and maybe some stuff that we're going to touch today in this session, in some point, you might get some kind of interruption between if you choose just one prefix to fit them all. So for directives, let's skip test to keep this demo light as possible. What else can we do? Well, a bunch of things, but that's probably what I'm going to do. Standalone, and that's it. Any questions regarding this part? Raise your hand. If not, I'm going to move forward. All right? It doesn't have to be like a new Angular project. Yeah, visit the Angular JSON, fine-tune your schematics, and make it work for you. The second practice that I encourage you to do, we work with Angular. We care about performance from day one. So we want to track two things. We want to track our bundle size. We want to track our initial loading performance. And we probably want to track our runtime performance. Make sense? Cool. Who's using any tool to track the bundle size? Raise your hand. I can see dead people. No, I'm kidding. I see like 3 people raising their hand. First practice, my friends. We can't be blind, all right? I mean, we're working with Angular. Tomorrow, open up your project and do 2 things. The first one actually is straightforward. If you haven't done it yet, and let's look at this together. First of all, localhost 200. Go ahead and install the Angular Devtool. If for any reason you're not familiar with an Angular Devtool, get familiar with the Angular Devtool. It's not the most amazing, sophisticated tool out there. To be honest, I spend a lot of my time in the performance tab on the Chrome Devtool, but it's really, really helpful not to see the visualize the component tree, the profiler. Makes my life much easier. We're gonna touch it. So first thing I'm gonna do in any Angular projects, make sure I've got the Angular Devtool extensions installed. So I don't want to be blind. The second thing I'm going to do, I'm going to visit the package.json, which is not this file, it's this file, And I'm going to add a script saying build with stats, ng build stats JSON. And what that's going to do is the following. Let me run it. npm run build stats. It's going to run a production build of Angular. It's going to be very quick because we don't have literally anything in this project. Always look at the output is priceless. What you see right now is called the initial chunk files. This is the files that have to be fully loaded in order to Angular to run. Without this bundle, which calls the initial bundle, you probably can't run Angular. So this is a very special collection of files. Alright, this is the styles, the runtime library, the polyfills, and your main bundle. And you should keep it small, and you should keep it in control. How do you keep it small? Who wants to answer? Who wants to answer? Who wants to answer? What?
Adding only dependencies which you need.
What?
Adding dependencies only which you need. So
Oh.
don't use the stuff in your project.
I agree with you. I mean, you should be very careful about the dependencies, all right? But you are on a large team, everyone works on this Angular project, and we want to use some automation and some tools that are going to help us. So a very important section on the Angular JSON called budgets. Who's familiar with the budgets? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not enough people, friends. So let's do it quick. What is budgets? Budgets, budge, where is it?
Angular JSON.
Oh, you're right. Angular JSON. Budgets. Budge. Here you go. Budgets are the place where you can set what is your bundle size budget, which means initial means all these bundles of scripts, which is crucial for Angular. Most of the time, the polyfills shouldn't change unless you add a polyfill, unless you're still supporting old browser or use like cutting edge syntax. Runtime should not change unless there is a new version of Angular and they decided to add something. Styles, it's a very sensitive file. And if I change this and say, all right, currently how much bytes do I got? 64. Let's say that I want to keep my initial 200 kilobyte, but let's produce an error, 20 kilobyte. Every time you run build, if it's going to exceed 20 kilobytes, it's going to throw an error, which gonna make your build fail and your entire deploy pipeline failed. And it's another small, straightforward, but important tool that can help us keep inside our budget. So as you can see here, bundle initial exceed maximum budget, budget is 20 kilobytes, blah, 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 blah. We got it. Now we are aware of it. In my company, we got this thing set up. And if one of the developers tried to build a project and get a budget error, it just means that you need to look inside and make sure that it didn't accidentally imported something that it shouldn't. Cool? Cool. What else can we do? Any component style, any component that's got style CSS should be in these boundaries. Another best practice. If CSS gets very, very large on a specific component, I want to know about it. Which other options do I got? Any script, all right? A specific bundle, we're going to see it soon. Initial, we talked about it, all right? All scripts, everything. Budgets is your friends. So speaking about Angular JSON, obviously there's a lot of other things that we can do. I think it was 3 or 2 years ago in NG Poland, I talked a little bit about custom builders, under the architect API, which is cool, which is nice, but to be honest, I'm working with Angular like most of my life, and I had like one use case when I actually had to build a custom builder and using the Angular dev kit, so it's uncommon, but bundles, schematics, go ahead and do it. So we build our project and we pass the stats file, and now I can see it. I think it was because of the bundle. So let's run it again. Let's make sure that the script is okay. Package JSON, where are you? Stat JSON. If you run ng-build with stat JSON, I'm expect to see here on my dist folder. Let's reload it. Reload. A JSON file called stats, which collects information. Now, in order to use it, I'm going to use a tool, a library called Webpack Bundle Analyzer. So I'm going to install it first. npm install Webpack Bundle Analyzer under dev dependencies. And then I'm going to create another script on my package JSON that will enable me to run this tool. So it's going to be a Webpack Bundle Analyzer, dist, and then the name of the project, which is Angular Love. And now I can run analyze, and it should look like this. npm run analyze. This is my favorite tool. It's open up on another tab, so I'm just going to bring it here on port localhost 888. Let's give it a second. And the bundle analyzer, it's your eyes into the bundle. Now this is a very small basic Angular project, so we basically got the main bundle, the polyfills, the runtime. There are no other modules, there is no third parties, but I can see what's going on. Now visually, if it's like a huge box, it means that it takes a lot of space, so you get some visual hints, but you can explore how much it weighs after it gzipped, and it gives you insight to your bundle. My recommendation, use this tool. If you don't use it, use it. Create scripts, build with stats, be aware of what's going on. You will find a lot of surprises, I can assure you. In one of our products, we discovered that a developer imported a function from a third-party library, but accidentally it didn't use the ES build. So it wasn't like the tree shakeable version of the library. So instead of import one function, he imported the entire date library and he used just one function. So quick fix, bundle analyzer helped us immediately identify it, and we changed it to the ES build, and that's it. We just saved hundreds of kilobytes. Any questions?
How do you run it?
How did I run it?
Yeah.
Look, I installed the Webpack Bundle Analyzer, as you can see here. All right, the name of the package.
You did run start only?
No. So I created another script, yeah. Webpack Bundle Analyzer, go to dist, Angular Love, stats.json, and produce this nice graphics from this JSON. So in order to actually use this tool, you first need to create yourself like build with this flag, generate a stat.json, which is built in Angular. As you can see, it's a flag, one of the flags of ng-build, yeah. It's not something external. And then you can use this tool, and there's another popular library that can read stats.json and produce this. Any other questions, my friends? Because I'm done with like my practices for like the fundamental practices for a new Angular project, or a new Angular project for me. Schematics, because I'm going to need it, and bundle analyzer, and Angular Devtool. And now I've got all the tools that I know for sure that I can run.
We talked about NX. How would you go with monorepo?
How would I go with monorepo?
Workspaces. Yarn workspaces, maybe, for a monorepo.
So the question is, what do I think about NX Workspace?
No, how would you make it a monorepo? What would you use?
Personally, I'm going to use NX.
Okay.
No, but it's just personal preference. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, generally speaking, in this point of time in my career, after working with this intensively with this framework and other frameworks, I were exposed to maybe hundreds of projects. I used to work as an Angular consultant for a few years. I believe that most of the tools, testing frameworks, people ask me what would you use and why, Jasmine or something else. Would you prefer Cypress or Test Cafe? Would you prefer this library or this library? I mean, my opinion is straightforward. I mean, every library got its pros and cons. Stick with one. It doesn't really matter. By the end of the day, you're going to get the same problems with each one of them. So just choose one, stick with one, and don't do BDD. Who knows what is BDD? BDD. Buzz-driven development. Bullshit-driven development. Buzzword-driven development. Oh, everyone talks about this library, so we probably need it. So let's come up with this keynote and show to our managers and try to convince them that we need it because everyone uses it, and then use it, and then we cry at nights.
May I have a question?
No, sorry. No, I'm kidding. No.
Because we talk about the performance.
Yeah.
Do you have any pro tips or tool to check the performance of the unit test? I mean, the fix and improve the performance of unit test.
The performance of unit test? I'm not familiar with the tool
Because
to know.
sometimes take too much time.
Yeah.
So we have any tools to analyze or improve? Or
So the question is, do I have any tool or recommendation how I can optimize the time and effort that it takes to run unit tests?
or analyze it?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not familiar with any tool. I can share from my experience that we suffer from slow unit tests, and recently we started to think about, and I started to think about and actually implement it, extract a lot of the logic, if not all of it, from the UI component, so I don't have to write unit tests for a simple component that just renders something to the screen, so it immediately makes the test run faster. I don't need to mock and compile and detect changes. We're using Cypress and Apply tools, for example, to check if everything looks okay visually, and all of the business logic that was belonging in the component extracted to services. And today we're gonna do like a nice demo, and I show you how you can manipulate view logic, but in a service, and make it much more testable, which probably gonna help in performance of tests. But I'm not familiar with specific tool to actually know how many times. I mean, the only tools that I know, if you run your tests, you should first of all, you should sit in front of it and wait. Now, if you find yourself doing this, that's a performance issue.
Okay, nice enough. If you have an existing project and it is not a monorepo, would you rather add convert this to monorepo or start a new project as a monorepo and
You're asking if I decided that I need a monorepo, would I prefer to convert it or just create a new one?
yes,
Like-
and copy and paste existing code.
So, up until recently, I was going for like creating a fresh new monorepo and migrate my code, but recently, at least in NX, it's very, very easy with a simple script to integrate NX into your project. Actually, if you're using WebStorm, there's probably a plugin, I believe there's a plugin for VS Code to do the same thing, but I can show you that if you install the NX plugin, NX console ideas. Actually, it's installed, all right? So let's try to use it. Let's do an NX. Migrate workspace or add NX to your project. There's like an automated script that does like all the configurations for you. So it's a wonderful plugin. It saves a lot of time and a lot of effort. So these days, if I want to create this, convert this Angular project into a monorepo, I'm probably going to use one of these scripts to do this. I just installed Bootstrap, so we have just a little bit of CSS. I'm on the styles file. I'm going to import Bootstrap CSS here. Bootstrap CSS, and now I believe it's just going to look a little bit nicer. Yeah, cool. So I created this div.container. Yep. I just want to make sure that Bootstrap is installed and working. It seems like it, although I'm not sure. But it seems like that Angular love sits in the middle, so that's probably, I've got this CSS class, yeah, from Bootstrap. We've got a component. Now we can do one of two things, and I let you choose. First, we can start talking a little bit about change detection, which is the main cause for all evil. The only thing that causes more evil than change detection is probably McDonald's. I'm vegan, so that's the reason I think they're the devil. We can talk about change detection and then do some other stuff and moving toward Angular 14 features, or we can start by taking this simple project and convert it to Angular 14 with some routing. So would you like to start with a bunch of useful techniques to make your app run faster and improve change detection, or start with boring configuration that migrate this project to Angular 14? Who's for change detection? Great. I don't care about the rest of things.
No, you didn't force nobody.
No. It was like totally objective. They did it from their own will. I tell you a secret because no one can hear me and I'm not like broadcasted to the world. Even if it was the opposite, I would start with change detection. But let's keep it between us.
So sorry, guys.
Change detection, the source of all evil. After being involved in endless Angular projects, I can tell you that 90% of the bugs and frustrating that I experienced myself and other developers is from the sources from one reason: automatic change detection. What is the trigger? What trigger change detection in Angular? Who wants to answer? Loudly, please. Change in virtual DOM? No, there is no virtual DOM in Angular.
Events.
Nice try. Events? What do you mean?
Click.
Okay.
Click on the button.
Click on the button, like any event?
Maybe not even. Just click on the button.
No, you're in the right direction. Event. Which part of the Angular framework is responsible for this automatic change detection? Zone. Zone is not even Angular. Zone is a standalone library that was created with someone had an idea to create a library that proxy like almost every async event in the browser and then let you run some functionality, and the Angular framework use it. This is one of the best things in Angular. You just change something and change detection runs. I mean, it doesn't matter if you change something or not, change detection is going to run on any event. The ng zone, the wrapper around zone.js, is going to find this event and trigger change detection, whatever you do. Let's play a nice game. I call this game Angular Interview Questions. and feel free to answer. Yeah, it's not like, don't be afraid to answer. You're not on a job interview and no one can hear us. It's not on YouTube or something. I've been told. All right. Let's say I've got a button, and on this button I'm gonna click, and I'm gonna implement a wonderful method called loop. And I create this method, and this method is not gonna do anything. Now let's give this button, let's make it pretty. btn primary, btn large. I'm just using some built-in CSS classes from Bootstrap, and let's come back here and let's click the button. Now I want to know if this users button actually trigger change detection, although it doesn't do anything, you know, as you can see. So I'm gonna go to the profiler, I'm gonna start recording, and I'm gonna click it, and change detection is being triggered. Why? Because some async event happened in the browser and Zone.js is loaded. And what's happened when change detection runs is gonna run through the component tree, and us as Angular developers, a lot of effort we invest of change detection gonna run because it's automatic. Let's fight with it and try to minimize the damage, which is kind of like, there is a huge problem, let's just keep it there and try to improve it, try to do something with it. This is the way I see it. When we tackle performance issues, a lot of performance issues is because of change detection. The way I see it, we've got two goals. First one, don't run change detection if it's not necessary, period. Don't run change detection and try to exclude several components. Don't run change detection at all if it's not needed. And change detection is needed for what? There's only one purpose for change detection. Can you think of it? Update components. But what is the responsibility for a component? Render something to the view. So the only reason that I would like change detection to run is to update the view. Does every async operation in your app is necessarily going to update the view? No. What if I press a button, I make an API call, I wait for the response, I check the response, and then I decide whatever I need to update something on my view? I don't want change detection to run for no reason. So this button trigger change detection. The profiler tool show us that the source is HTML button element, and it runs. Yeah, no question about it. Let's do another thing. Let's first remove the CSS spec and everything that was created here. Let's create a new Angular component because we want another one. Let's call it child component because it's going to be the child of the only component that we currently got. It started with standalone, which means it's not included in any module, but that's not good enough because we are still working in a module-based application. So now WebStorm tell me, listen, there's no module for it, all right? So it should be included in my app module. So let me just add it here. And I go back to my app component. I'm going to use this component right here. Angular love C, ALC, child component. And I want to log every time change detection runs. I want to see something in the console. So what's going to be the best way to do it? Which method? On changes run when? On changes is going to run every time there's a change detection. Let's give it a try. Let's do on changes. Let's implement on changes. There is no input in this component. Let's do log. Let's do child component. CD, so we know it runs. Let's do something cool and do print it in red, because then we can see it easily. And now we come back here and console and refresh, and I don't know, I don't see anything. Because on changes, it's a very specific lifecycle method. If your component has any inputs, if this input's immutable and changed, on change is going to run. Otherwise, it's not going to run. So the best thing is to implement do check. Do check going to run every time change detection runs. It doesn't really care if something changed. So let's implement do check, like take this console log, put it here, save everything, and now we can see 2 change detection cycles. Why does change detection run twice? Who knows?
Initially and after the change?
No?
It's on a CI dev environment.
It is stable. No. What does it mean? Why change detection run twice right now?
It's dev environment, so we are running twice.
Dev environment, you're right, yeah. It's a feature. Why? Because change detection in Angular traverses the tree in one direction only once. So it check the parent and each one of the children. Now, if we check a component and then the child component change something on the parent, we've got a problem. We missed it. So in development mode, just for safety, change detection run twice to make sure that after this first pass, nothing else has changed. Because if something changed, we're going to get an error value change after it was checked. So we know we've got a bug. That's the reason it runs twice. All right, next. Every time I click, change detection runs, nothing happened. All right. This console log lives on the child component. Yeah? Let's remove the child component from here. Let's give it an ID. You know what? Let's do something better. You see this binding, this thing right here? I suspect that because I'm using event binding on Angular, that causes Angular change detection to run. If I won't use this special syntax, there's no reason that the click gonna trigger change detection. Nothing changed. So let's do something. Let's give it an ID and let's run some vanilla JavaScript. Implements after viewing it, and let's do this. Let's come here and do document get element by ID. I call it btn, and let's do add event listener, vanilla JavaScript, no Angular. Let's listen to click, and let's don't do anything. What do you want from me? Possibly now. I become possibly now. Pink Floyd, if you're not familiar with the song. All right? So, no click. No Angular. Change detection gonna run? No Angular. Vanilla JavaScript. Who thinks it's gonna run? Not too many people. Runs like a boss. And why it was so important to me to show you this vanilla JavaScript version, it means that every third-party JavaScript library that register event listeners on native DOM elements gonna trigger change detection. So we have a huge problem here. All right? A huge problem. Sometimes you suffer from performance issue. You look at your source code, you can't find anything, but it's still happening, and you don't understand why. And after 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, you find out that this tooltip library that you added It's got one line that add event listener on something, on the window, on a button or whatever, and it just keep running change detection and you don't really understand why. Who heard that DOM manipulation in Angular is a very bad practice? Raise your hand. Direct DOM manipulation. So everyone else think it's a great idea to use like document and stuff. What happens if I'm going to take this child component, I'm going to give it an ID, let's call it child. I'm going to do document by ID, I'm going to grab this child, and instead of add event listener, I'm going to remove it from the DOM. This button, that's okay, we can go back to click because we understand that nothing really happened. Now, if you look here, it's still there. Why? What have I done wrong? Oh, it's not there. There is no child works. There is no child component. All right? Are you still with me, guys? There's no child component. Just the button. Let's make sure. Let's do an inspect element. Yeah, I can see just the button. I don't see any instance of child component. So I completely removed it. Is that console log will still gonna happen? Who thinks it's still gonna happen? You. Why?
Since the child component was removed later and this console log was added when
you said it might be some kind of like a race condition. It depends of how the code runs. The component was removed after the first console log was doing. You might be right, but it's do check. It means that it will keep running if I run change detection, if it still works.
I assume that there is this console log is added to general do check. I mean, is there do check for one component, or is there general do check for all components visible?
Sorry, I will not listen.
Okay. So
I'm kidding. Listen, I'm going to teach you something right now that literally, I believe, and you're going to tell me if I'm right, going to change the way you look at Angular and can open up like a brand new world for you. All right? Is there any whiteboard here? No. So I'm going to have to use some slides. You want to say something before?
Yeah, there's Angular keeps a copy of a DOM tree, and if you remove it from the DOM, it still Angular still has it.
Keep a copy, interesting. Yeah. But it was removed from the DOM completely. It seems like the instance of the component is still intact. It's still there. I don't believe it's even a DOM element. I mean, I believe it just the object is still alive. This is reference for what?
This is reference of component.
So I remove the reference, that's what you're saying? I remove the reference, but everything is still alive. All right. Look, I'm going to have to use some slide, and I want to show you something which is very, 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 very powerful. I'm trying to do this without any success. I just lost it. Where are you? Here you are. Come here. No, I've got a technical issue. Just wait a second. It is a technical issue. All right, here you are. Come here. All right. In Angular, when you create a component, basically, the IV compiler translates your component into another data structure that Angular calls a view. It's a very special data structure. In this data structure, you will find tview. I'm going to show it to you in a second. Tview is how your template is constructed. Angular used this template view to create a logical view. So Angular creates a tree of objects, and all the relationship between the objects, what trigger what, where there is a conditional rendering, all right, will stay intact forever, unless you do something very specific to break it. Then there is the renderer view. What you see in the DOM is not always a mirror of the tree of views that Angular created. It doesn't necessarily look the same. If you've got a P and a div and component, and you've got like a hierarchy, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you're going to look at the DOM. Each one of these components hold a reference to a DOM element. So if I've got a component and I've got a reference to a DOM element, an instance of this view, all right? And with vanilla JavaScript, I just remove the reference, everything else is still alive. I just removed the reference for a DOM element, so we don't see anything on the DOM. The DOM was created, and I just came in and removed something from the DOM. But the Angular view, the tree of objects, which is not a virtual DOM. Virtual DOM, it's a reflection of the DOM with JavaScript objects. In Angular, it's tricky. But it is a tree of JavaScript objects, is still intact. Which means that what you see right now is kind of interesting, because first I believe it's explained why removing with vanilla JavaScript some DOM elements is a bad practice, because you are not correctly destroy the instance of this view object. You just remove the DOM element, all right?
And then we have memory leak.
You do have a huge memory leak because you have zombies. This instance is still alive. It might subscribe to something, all right? Cool? You with me, guys? Let's look at this. Let's have a quick look on this logical view, because it's explained this. Let's do something that I'm sure that you're doing like every time. We're gonna inject view container ref. And then here, I'm going to log it. And let's see what we get. So this is a view container ref. And here you can see I've got a host view and a host node. But what I want you to look, you see the L and the T, the capital L and T, stands for logical and template. So in this strange data structure, this array-like data structures, I've got a bunch of nodes. Few of them are just initialized with null. Few of them hold some information, like the template view, which holds a lot of binding information and stuff. And you find the L view, which holds some logical information about this tree. Like logical means what's the relationship between the nodes. Logical means you've got an ngIf. This one should be hidden and show again. This like logically, that's what needs to happen. Logically, this group of nodes needs to act together as a group. Make sense?
Is this structure specific to Ivy, or what before?
So before Ivy, there was the view container, the view, the first compiler, view engine. Yeah, there was a view engine implementation. In any point of time since the beginning of Angular, our code was translated to some data structure. AV is much more sophisticated, so it's an optimized data structure. When you build an Angular app, you basically build a tree of objects. It ends up as a tree of objects that the DOM is created from these instructions. So if you manipulate the DOM, you don't do anything to the tree. So Angular is still alive, memory leaks, zombie components, instances, strange things going on, performance issues because change detection runs on components that does not render anything, and a lot of other great stuff. Is that clear enough? Yes. No.
Why there's no system to, I don't know, sometimes check if those two structures are the same?
It's very complicated to write something like this. It's going to make the framework... Well, you want the honest answer or just bullshit?
Too slow?
No. Honestly, Angular is like, it's complicated. So if you want to master Angular, you need to invest a lot of time. And then you will always be busy, my friends, because Angular experts are like very little people. But seriously, it's really complicated framework. I mean, started to add more and more layers to compare these objects, to try to find if something, did you remove the reference to the DOM element or not? Something changed in the renderer tree, just make it too complicated.
No, because there is this system installed about two times checking change detection. So in that mode.
Yeah, but it's got nothing to do with change detection. Change detection runs.
But the system there is. It's
Unfortunately.
additional, so why not additional check for?
Maybe in the future we'll see something that can alert us. Hey, wait a second, there are few components and there is no reference to any DOM element, or DOM element was removed.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yes, please, a question.
When we have, for example, third part library,
Yeah.
For example, material, and inside material rendered some component.
Mm-hmm.
For example, match sort. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how can I remove that?
How can you handle this problem? That's what you ask?
If I use renderer tool, then this is correct.
So the question is, how do I do it correctly? How do I remove stuff from the DOM correctly? So Angular got two classes to handle DOM manipulation, generally speaking. The view container class and the renderer class. The renderer class is a class that contains a lot of methods that let you manipulate properties or even structure. It's not going to help you. If you use the renderer to remove DOM elements, you're going to end up within the same problem. The correct way to work with Angular is first to understand that there is a tree of objects, and then to use the right way to create these view objects, manage them, and remove them. Because any other way that you try to do it with vanilla JavaScript is going to end up with unexpected results. But let's hold a little bit about these questions, because I don't want us to go too far from, optimized change detection, all right? So first of all, let's do some practical stuff. How can I handle this set timeout problem? Remember this set interval that I show you that it's trigger change detection? How can I handle this? Wrap it with? Let's explain to everyone. I can inject ngZone, and then I can use utility here which says this ngZone run outside of Angular, and whatever going on here is not going to be catched by Zone.js. So right now this set interval will work, but it's not gonna trigger change detection. Alright, so you see set interval here, but you don't see any change detection response to it. It's possible, it's 100% valid. You should use it to wrap async functions that you might don't want to trigger change detection, but there's another way. And the other way is this. You can use feature that calls zone flags. Who heard about it? Raise your hand. Cool. So we're going to learn something new. No one heard about zone flags? That's wonderful. I'm happy. I'm just look angry, but deep inside, I'm a very nice person. No. Don't talk with me. I'm terrible. Let's talk about what is zone flags, how it can help us. First of all, I've got a radical advice for you guys. You're starting a new Angular project from scratch, or your Angular project is still small and you're under control. Go radical. Come here, set ngZone to nope, no Zone.js. change detection will never run unless you specifically inject change detector ref and call a method called detect changes. Sounds terrible, but a lot of other popular libraries do it, and you are in total control. For example, if we go back to our app component, now I can decide, you remember this snoop? Well, it's not going to trigger change detection now. I click it, nothing happened. Unless I decide that I'm doing something here, that eventually I want to update the view, so I can inject change detector ref, let's call it cd ref, and I can call this cd ref detect changes, just like set state in React. And you are in full control. You decide when to call detect changes, just a second, when to call detect changes, and nothing is automatically. Yes, please.
What's the difference between this approach and change detect and on push strategy?
That's a good question, but it's completely two different things. The change detection on push is disable automatic change detection on this component unless the input is changed. That's a trigger, and it forces you to go in a very, very good practice which keep everything immutable, use the inputs to pass data for the component, which is amazing and wonderful, and most of the times you set change detection on push and it just, you know, solves you a lot of problem. But in reality, component can change not from inputs. Component can change in any other ways. You can mutate the component state not because you want to, not because it's a good thing to do, because reality strikes. For example, you lazy load a component, you set some inputs. You've got some internal logic that's going to manipulate an internal state. Not every change in the components coming from an input. Most of the time, change detection on push, keep everything immutable, use the async pipe, no issues. Change detection runs when it needs to run, and any other cycle is just being ignored. All right. The only benefits of choosing to do it explicit like this is that it's explicit. So by the end of the day, we write code for humans. I'm reading your project, I want to understand what's going on. So obviously we would like to get some magic. Not everything needs to be exposed. I need things to work for me. When you see this line of code, you know exactly when change detection is triggered and why. Personal preferences. Yes, please.
Will async pipe works if you turn off ngzone? Because probably when you set ngzone, loop async pipe.
It's a great question, so I want to answer this. Does async pipe gonna work if change zone just set to nope? No, but luckily, a good friend of mine, which is I believe it's like one of the best people out there for Angular performance, Michael Hatsky, is gonna talk on. He's got a talk on NG Poland. NGRX, which is not just for global state management. It's got a wonderful library. NGRX, where are you? Here you go, the push pipe. All right. All right. See this? It's a drop replacement for async pipe. It's like the async pipe. It subscribes to the observable that you provide, and the last line is mark for check. So if you go zoneless and you are like in a good place, like working with the async pipe, and you replace it with NGRX push, everything gonna still be reactive and everything gonna be updated, but Zone.js set to nope. All right?
What with external libraries?
Sorry. What was the question?
External libraries.
External libraries, wrap it with run outside of Angular. You don't really have any other options to deal with it. Cool. Less techniques that gonna really help you. Actually, it's from the same author. You can use zone flags. Zone flags is a feature in Angular that lets you fine-tune Zone.js. That's it. We're done.
No.
We need to go.
No.
It's still early.
Don't worry.
I'm get
continue.
down in
Keep going, keep going, keep going.
2-3 hours and we're done.
Do you need a beer? You need a beer.
I've got enough. Thank you.
You're fine, okay.
Zone flags, friends. You create a file, a separate file. So you call it zone flags .ts. In this zone flags, you can catch the window, all right? And then you can access zone, and you've got a bunch of things that you can do with it. For example, zone disable, let's find it, zone disable timers. Here you go. Set to true. Or like zone disable promises. I don't want it every time that a promise zone aware promises. Disable zone aware promises. You can fine tune what Zone.js is sensitive to. I don't want it to run on timeless. I don't want that every promise that is resolved gonna trigger change detection. And then you can go to your polyfills file where Zone.js is imported. And actually, if you have ever just read the comments, you would see it's right here. So you don't even need to think too much. But who reads the comments? Come on, it's for amateurs. All right. So here you can import the zone flags before Zone.js is imported, and you can disable some zone aware features. So if you want to be more specific about which events Zone.js is actually catch and trigger change detection, but you don't want to go like Zone.js nope and start refactor your entire app, you can start doing it like slowly. You can use zone flags, and there's a wonderful library, RX, I forgot the name, but I'm going to share it with you, library from the same author, from Michael, that just expose a bunch of utilities methods to set these zone flags, and it's much more friendly to use than just, you know, these statements of window with any set of flags. But that's not enough for us. We want more. So we talked about going nope, change detection. We talked about ng-zone run outside of Angular. But actually there is one setting that can literally automatically and almost for free saves you a lot of unneeded change detection cycles. And it's caused by a very known problem. It's not really a problem, but what's going to happen if you've got, let's say, a dialog that you render, and inside this dialog you've got two buttons like OK and cancel, maybe it's a form, you've got reset, some async events happen in this dialog. And the dialog itself, and you have some event listener register on top of it. For example, you can click and move, mouse overs. In other words, you've got a situation that somewhere in your code, you've got a click and you've got another event listener as its parent. DOM events bubble. The question is, does Angular is smart enough to see that if I click this button, which is inside of another element that's got a click listener, to run change detection only once, like to batch them? What do you think?
You can disable bubbling, if I remember correctly.
How many times change detection gonna run if I'm gonna click this button? 4 times because of other reasons. All right? Cool? Not cool.
Disable propagation.
So one very important setting that I believe that every Angular project can benefit from, come here, go to event coalition, know how to pronounce this word in English, and set it to true. So it means that if you've got like a button or a click event, it's nested on another event, just take all of them and run change detection only once, all right? Let's see if that works. All right? And it's not 4, it's 3, but it's 1 because of other reasons, yeah? Well, we can find out why, actually, if we want. Let's see if that's fast enough. So we can come here and let's see what's going on. First of all, we've got this. Let's remove it. We've got detect changes on the button. All right? So now, if I click this, all right, it's going to happen only once. Without event correlation. If you've got like, because you can't see all of your structure, accidentally you've got a problem of event bubbling. So instead of event, prevent bubbling, blah, 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 and all of this, prevent defaults, just set this of like, please, please, please be a little bit smarter, and if there's like this bubbling, catch everything but run change detection only once. So by setting this, you're automatically in a much better place. All right?
Why is this not default in?
I waited for this question. Why is it not default? I don't have any answers. I asked these questions myself. I didn't got any good answer. I believe, if you ask me, the default behavior of the DOM is to bubble event. So the default would be, this is behave normally. You want to stop bubbling, you should do it like, all right? So it would be strange because we want it to behave normally unless you want to interfere. Are we good? You want more and that's it.
Question about what were the actual live cases of the performance issues that required such a approach to disable zone. So what is the real use case of this
Great question.
Performance?
Like to disable zone completely?
Yeah.
All right. Disable zone completely basically means, first of all, as a developer, I want to gain full control of when change detection runs. Why would I like to do it? Because change detection is triggered by any events. Every promise resolved, every click, every event listener out there, whether I wrote it or from third-party libraries. And we all use a lot of NPM modules, which is perfectly fine. So you are out there in the dark. Every... Excuse me?
It's much easier to debug.
If you disable, obviously, you know exactly what's going on. So it's more like a state of mind that, yeah, you know what, most of the time, most of the Angular apps don't disable zone. So change detection runs, but you do spend time fine-tuning. This should be run outside of Angular. This should be on push. This should be detached from the injector tree. And this one I should disable, and just a lot of effort. Why? Especially when we learn that other popular libraries, you need to be explicit when you want to run changes, and it's not such a big deal. It's not happening automatically. So real use cases I can think of a lot. The most, I give you one because I want to connect it to something real, all right? Let's say that you want to track user events for analytics. Every time that your user doing some stuff, you want to make a post request to your server. Make sense? All right. But every async event triggers change detection. So every time you've got like a fetch or whatever, change detection runs. Why? No reason. HTTP client dot post. I don't even care about the return. I'm just sending some information. Real world use case scenario. I don't want change detection to run. The first reason that you can wrap it in the service, run outside of Angular. You don't have to do ngzone nope. Yeah. Think about it. Before we do some Angular 14 magic, would you like to implement some cool directive? Who wants to implement some nice directive? Yeah. Because how radical would you like it to take it? I've got like two categories, all right? I've got like a radical example of view containers and renders tree, and I've got a radical example of like DOM manipulation with the renderer that actually, in which category would we choose? Oh, and there is another category, which is micro syntax. Who's familiar with component micro syntax? Who heard about it? One? Interesting. All right, let's start with something. Let's implement them all. let's do some live coding fun without any purpose. And then we'll see where we are, and if we had enough, we can just go home. All right, first one. Let's do something fun. App component. App component, let's create a text area. Everyone loves text areas. That's it, we need to go home. Everyone loves text areas. What's the problem about text areas? They don't auto-expand. All right? So the first directive that I'm going to show you, I'm going to skip live coding. I'm just going to use some snippets because I want to, start to keep it shorter because I can talk for hours. The first directive that we're going to evaluate together is going to look like this. Auto resize. Let's go through the code and see the beauty of it. First of all, look at the selector. Is this a directive selector? No, it's an element because directives can use any CSS selectors that you like to use. And this one says that any text area whatsoever gonna have this directive. So I don't need to add this directive, all right? I'm gonna take this directive, we're gonna add it to the module so we can use it. So app module, here's the directive. And go through the code, wonderful things, all right? Host binding to style because I want it to affect the style. A host listener because I want to listen to the input. Then a bunch of vanilla DOM manipulation because it's totally fine. It's not going to hurt Angular, it just manipulate the DOM. I'm not going to mess with the tree. So I'll compute the height and everything I need and set the new height. And now when I come back to my app component, I don't need to do anything because it's an element selector, and I can start typing down stuff and my text area gonna expand. I'm gonna share this code with you, wonderful code. One great example. Let's do quick two and then we keep it short. What would we choose? What would you choose? Let's do something radical. Another great example, a tooltip component. What is the tooltip component? Working with the renderer, I'm going to create elements from scratch. So every time you hover, you've got your mouse hover over an element, I'm going to use the renderer to create element, to append childs, to create the whole structure of DOM elements, working with the native element. I'm going to set some styles internally inside the component, encapsulate it inside the component. I don't need to use any CSS or any other technology. It's just JavaScript, so I can use variables if I like. Eventually, I'm going to append this tooltip to the element, and it's going to look like this. Let's go to the module. Take the tooltip directive, go back to our app component, and give it a try. Tooltip directive, some info, and let's see if the, oh, bunch of problems. Why is it? Actually, he's trying to tell me something, but there's no initializer. Huge problem in Angular. tsconfig tell me you create a property, you didn't initialize it. But I don't want to initialize it, it's Angular. Great tip for you, tsconfig. Go to compiler options, strict initialize. It's not relevant in Angular. I don't want to initialize all of my properties inside the constructor. I want to initialize it on lifecycle methods and so I don't want it to interrupt me. I'm going to need to restart the TypeScript service to get rid of this problem. So it's going to take some time to disappear. And the other problem that we've got might not exist. Property tooltip directive is not an initializer. Yeah, we still suffer from this. You know what you should do? Yeah, plug it out from the power outlet and and reconnect it. Like npm serve. npm. Here's the run. It's still running. Let's restart it and hope for the best. Well, time flies when we start talking on Angular. So I didn't even notice, and we spent a lot of time together. And I can keep like this for hours. Here's our tooltip. But I've got a better suggestion for you, because we have a pre-party, and one of the most important things in this kind of meetup is to hang out together. Two things. First of all, in this kind of session, who learned at least one new thing about Angular? So good. So I'm happy. I'm available for all of you. And I've got a bunch of examples, and I addicted to share this knowledge to save a lot of time if I can. So if you want to keep talking about Angular, we can do it in the after party. If you want to keep talking about Angular offline, there is this nir.life. Simple website, all the ways to connect me. I don't have any privacy over the network. You can literally get my address and zip code if you just Google it. Feel free to ask more questions to get more resources. I'm going to prepare a special repository with all these cool examples of cool directives, and I'm going to share the link so all of you can go through it, and maybe it's inspired you to see what you can see with some directives. And I think we're gonna, we're gonna end it right here, the official session.